This is the supply hub for Bergen County, filled with PPE, medical equipment, and of course, the freezers necessary to store the COVID vaccine. They have the capacity to store about 1 million doses here, but right now, the allocation they're getting fits into this container.
So this is the ultra cold deep freeze. This is 27 cubic feet. Freezer.
What do we have in here?
And you can see
it's empty.
It's empty.
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 All those shelves.
Yep. Just waiting to have the Pfizer vaccine stored in here.
I mean, you've got an entire wall lined with freezers and refrigerators here, all empty, no COVID vaccines.
No, right.
What does this image say?
Well, it says that we're ready. Whenever vaccines are available, we're ready. We can take off tens of thousands of doses to vaccinate Pattersonians.
We are the largest hospital in the state of New Jersey, and our vaccination capacity is pretty much endless. Today, what we're doing is 800 to 1,000 vaccines a day. But because we're a hospital, we can actually run vaccinations through 24 hours a day.
This used to be a racetrack. Now it is a mega site for vaccinations. When you look at this place, what do you think?
This is the sort of infrastructure that we've built up and down the state. They're going to do 800 vaccinations today. They can do 2,400. I have supreme confidence that the Biden administration will solve the supply chain challenges, and they'll be doing 2,400, I hope, sooner than later here. Boom.
Well, first of all, the federal government said that they're going to release more doses. I hope so. I know the state is short because the state depends on what is allotted to them by the federal government.
We have a waiting list of about 60,000 people in Bergen County here at this site alone.
60,000 just at this site, and there are many others.
Oh, yeah.
What's your message to the Biden administration?
Get me more vaccine. It's pretty simple.
It started in South Africa. Now it's in South Carolina, a fast-spreading variant of the coronavirus showing up twice. But strangely, the two adults who have this South African strain have no travel history and no connection to each other. NBC News' Craig Melvin is in North Charleston, South Carolina, with more on those cases.
One of the things that's most concerning is the two folks aren't connected. There's no connection between the two cases, and neither person had traveled recently as well. And that is one of the reasons that the COVID-19 response, the new White House response team, was so concerned today. They said in a briefing that that's just another reason that social distancing and mask wearing and keeping clean hands, another reason that those three things are still so important. Also using it to underscore the importance of getting the vaccines rolled out quicker. I asked one of the top health officials here in South Carolina what they can do to get that done.
What we are doing is exactly what we need to be doing. We have increased our pipeline of providers who can give vaccines, working with our fellow agency over at the Labor Licensing and Regulation, some of the medical boards, as well as within DHEC. We have expanded the number of people who are authorized to give vaccinations. We have enrolled hundreds of providers who want to provide the vaccine as soon as we have enough flow of it coming into the state to be able to get it to them. So we are prepared, we are ready, and we are getting shots in arms. We just need to be getting more vaccine.
And of course, all of this happening on the same day that Johnson & Johnson revealed that its new highly anticipated one-dose vaccine is just over 70% effective here in the United States. They plan to apply for that emergency use authorization within the next week.
Sit, stay, detect coronavirus? There is apparently a dog for that. The Miami Heat brought fans and COVID sniffing dogs to their arena last night. The dogs pick up a unique scent on humans that can be caused by the virus before a person even tests positive. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock is in Miami covering these unique canines.
Allison, good afternoon. What the Miami Heat unveiled last night with COVID sniffing dogs right where I'm standing is something that no sports franchise in any sport, not baseball, not basketball, not football, has done until now. And it worked really well. They were able to screen 1,500 people that were coming here in limited capacity in 90 minutes or less. If you tried to do that with rapid antigen testing, we would be here all night. Let me walk you through exactly how it happened. So fans would come in this way. We're on the side of American Airlines Arena right now. They'd come down this pathway. They'd be directed right to where those cones and barricades are, all the way down the street to the very start of those tents. And then they would come back around in this direction in parallel line formations. They would do a set of people on this side, another set of people on that side. And if you look really carefully, you can see little stickers on the ground. Those stickers make sure that people are at least 6 feet apart as this is happening. So they line up 10 to 15 people on each side. Then the dogs come, and they're standing there just like this. The dogs will come by and literally just sniff the people, and you'll see their hands go up like this when it happens. They figure out what's going on, and then keep on going. If the dogs just walk by, that means you're good to go. You don't have COVID. If they stop and sit, it means they detect the virus. And these dogs, according to some studies, are 95% accurate. They even detect the presence of COVID-19 before it would show up in a test, before you would even feel symptoms. So this is an incredible tool that's being deployed right now. And from what I'm told, it is scalable, not just to sporting events, but to concerts, to government buildings, to airports. We spoke with Mike Larkin, who works with Global Canine Protection, about how applicable this new resource could be all over the map.
If you follow the math and you do the process correctly, it's scalable. If you think about the landscape of what we're doing, we're in this pandemic landscape, and everybody's trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to look forward to this bridge to get us over to post-pandemic time? And that is only going to be through these types of organizations willing to take the time, willing to invest the resources and capital and human effort to build this kind of program.
When it comes to training the dogs, Mike said it takes somewhere between 4 weeks and 8 weeks, depending upon what kind of dog it is, its biases, its personality, but that's a rough time sketch. He also said that this is the first time ever that this has been unveiled in this manner, in the sense that if you see it in an airport, Helsinki, Finland, for example, or Dubai, what they're doing there is taking swabs of passengers, then taking those swabs, putting it in a little capsule, and then moving it to a device where the dog can smell it. Here, for the first time ever, the dogs are smelling people in real time, and instead of this taking minutes per person, it's taking seconds per person. Pretty fascinating stuff, Allison. We'll see where the technology goes next. That's the very latest here in Miami. Let me send it back to you.
Teachers in a suburban Illinois school district getting their COVID shots today. But in nearby Chicago, teachers and staff are still waiting to roll up their sleeves, and they could have to wait until mid-February, even though the city wants many of those teachers back in the classroom on Monday. NBC News correspondent Shaq Brewster is in Deerfield, Illinois.
Hi there, Allison. Well, the vaccinations that we saw here in Deerfield was part of a partnership with Walgreens. You'll remember it was Walgreens and CVS that took the lead nationally in vaccinating those long-term care facilities, places like nursing homes during that first wave of vaccinations. Well, now they're having a pilot vaccination clinic for some schools. And because Walgreens has a corporate headquarters here in Deerfield, Illinois, the public school district here is getting their first crack at it. So what we saw today was about 500 public school employees. We're talking about teachers, custodians, lunch monitors going in to get their vaccines and their vaccinations. The vaccines were free. The health providers were provided by Walgreens. It was all set up in their own clinic. And this is part of something that you're seeing not just here in Deerfield, but in other suburban Chicago districts. It was yesterday when about 600 employees got their vaccination through a partnership with Jewel Osco, a local grocery store and pharmacy in this area. What you're seeing in these suburban districts is drastically different than what you're seeing in Chicago, as Chicago Teacher Union and the public schools, the city, go back and forth in this standoff over exactly when they will reopen in that district. The city wanted that date to be Monday, February 1st, but the Teachers Union is saying that is just happening too quickly. They want a reopening plan that more closely aligns with the vaccination plan, which we know vaccines for those teachers are still several weeks off. Then there's the principals, who are the ones who are going to have to enforce any reopening plan, who are going to have to execute them. Well, an association of principals came out with their own plan, suggesting that it was a phased reopening that would be the better bet. Listen to what the president of that association of principals told me just this morning.
If we don't open for everyone eventually, it's certainly going to be inequitable. But we have to start small because our district has demonstrated it does not have the capacity to open on a large scale without serious problems and breakdowns and protocols that are going to end up costing someone their lives.
Now, negotiations continue between the Chicago Teachers Union and the city. There's still no deal yet. The Chicago Teachers Union is saying that if they are forced to return in person on February 1st, well, instead of returning, they will simply strike, which means for parents, they are bracing for potentially the second strike for teachers in the city of Chicago in less than 2 years. If you listen to the language of both sides, it seems like they're both trying to come up with some agreement instead of having that take place. Meanwhile, you have families saying that they just feel like they're not having a voice in this. You have some families saying they want their kids to go back because they see the negative effects of virtual learning. Others saying they're simply not ready. Allison?
Could we have another strong COVID vaccine candidate? Johnson & Johnson releasing its trial results today, saying it plans to file for emergency FDA approval in early February, which, if you haven't checked your calendar recently, starts on Monday. Public health physician Dr. Chris Purnell joins me now. Dr. Purnell, thank you so much for being here. Johnson & Johnson saying its vaccine is 72% effective in the U.S. That is a pretty big drop from the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, which are around 95%. So what's your read of those results?
So what we really got to focus on is not only that it's 72% effective in the U.S., but Johnson & Johnson is reporting that it's 85% effective against severe disease. So that right there is encouraging. In addition to it being 85% effective against severe disease, this particular vaccine will have a longer shelf life, and this particular vaccine will not need to be stored at such ultra cold temperatures. So this gives us another tool in our tool chest. We got to remember that the messenger RNA vaccines really blew everyone's mind away, coming out with that 94 and 95% effectiveness. But there are going to be different scenarios where the multiplicity of options is going to prove to be a great collective benefit for all of our communities.
So what would you say to someone who just looks at this on the surface, hears that efficacy number and thinks, I don't want that shot, I want the 95% effective one? What else do we need to know about this vaccine candidate before people start making the call whether it's right for them?
It's one shot. Right? So that's going to be a distinguishing feature for a lot of people. So whenever you have anything that requires multiple shots or multiple visits to a clinic or a provider, there's the risk that you have drop off at that second encounter. With one shot, we can guarantee that people are fully vaccinated, and being fully vaccinated, that they have the immunity that's required to prevent moderate and severe disease. I'm going to go back to that stat on severe disease. That's really important. Because if you can prevent severe disease, you're preventing hospitalizations, you're preventing mortality, and you're preventing morbidity that's associated with the illness and disease.
Meanwhile, biotech company Novavax, which got funding last year from Trump's Operation Warp Speed, is saying that its experimental coronavirus vaccine is 89% effective at preventing COVID. What do we know about this vaccine candidate so far?
So what's encouraging about this is that it did prove that it was effective against the UK strain. The UK strain that we know is most likely more transmissible. It didn't have as high efficacy against the South African strain. Also, this technology does require 2 shots. And also with this technology, you have the opportunity to vaccinate more folks in the community because it won't require some of the storage and cold chain capacities that the other mRNA vaccines do. What also may be reassuring for people with this vaccine is that Novavax uses traditional flu vaccine science, I should say. One of our flu vaccines currently on the market uses a similar technology, meaning that the viral proteins are manufactured in the lab, and then there's an addition of an adjuvant to boost the immune response. So this is something that we know from a scientific standpoint, and that might be more reassuring to parts of the public.
Cities across the country are debating reopening their schools right now. I'd like to play CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky commenting on that today. Here she is.
CDC continues to recommend that K through 12 schools be the last setting to close after all other measures have been employed, and the first to reopen when they can do so safely. Accumulating data suggests school settings do not result in rapid spread of COVID-19 when mitigation measures are followed.
Dr. Purnell, your take here on reopening schools and what we need to do to make sure we're doing this right?
Has to be done in a scientific manner, in a data-driven and data-informed way. Look, what we do know, and this was something that was a bit surprising for us because before there was some concern, we know that schools have not been hotspots for spikes in infections or illness. What we know that is that mixing households has been, but that is hard for parents to hear, that's hard for educators to hear, but we've got to be plain spoken about the science. And the second part that I will say is that you heard the CDC director said when mitigating factors are followed. We have to ensure that those other basic public health principles are definitely in effect, that we have safe distancing in our classrooms, that we have frequent hand hygiene, and that universal masking is followed 100%. In addition to that, we have to ensure that teachers have access to vaccinations. We don't want our teachers going back into the classroom under duress, and we don't want our students or our parents sending their children back into the classroom under duress. So we've got to partner with this across multiple school districts across the United States. And as long as we keep hand in hand with the science, and as I like to say, practice science with empathy, understanding the perspectives and the fears and the concerns that are there, we can help people understand how to do this safely, but we've got to be able to deliver.
Dr. Anthony Fauci said today that the Biden administration hopes to start administering COVID-19 vaccines to children by late spring. What are you watching for in the trial data there? And what advice would you have for parents who are just a little bit worried about vaccinating their kids?
I want to make sure that the safety profile is firmly established by the data, right? Because we're going to be looking at dosing. Is dosing comparable or similar? What are the differences between the adult and the pediatric populations? We want to see what are the side effects that children are likely to experience. We want to make sure that there isn't any increase in known adverse effects. There are very few and rare adverse effects, as we've seen in the adult population. So that's going to be key in the pediatric population as well. And finally, we want to know that it is as effective as it is in the adult population and that it prevents severe disease. So those same principles and parameters that were important to those vaccines being approved in 16 and older in Pfizer's case and 18 and over in Moderna's case, being able to prove that and demonstrate that conclusively so that we can reassure families, reassure parents, and that we can get the majority of our public vaccinated.
Dr. Purnell, I know you were on News Now once before, but I was off that day, so it is so nice to meet you. I hope you'll come and join us again. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.